Hello, party people. This is Lorade Shiombola, founder of Noir Labs, Noir Press, and Noir Fest. It's been a while. This is season 2 of Black Genius. We haven't been on since last year, last fall, and we're back with our second season of Black Genius. We'll be doing a 10 by 10 series on Harambeans. Harambeans are an elite group of African entrepreneurs who are building Africa's future through market creating enterprises. I became a Harambean in 2019, and in that process was very just honored and inspired by the people that I met. And I knew that this generation would indeed liberate Africa once I saw the heart and the commitment of Harambeans. And the person that we have on today, Iyinoluwa Aboyeji, I read something that he wrote last year, and that's actually what inspired this series. Last year, Nigeria turned 60. If you've been paying attention to what's going on the continent, especially in Nigeria, then you know about the End SARS movement, and you know that it got very bloody, and Nigeria is really dealing with a tyrannical government. So what it takes to get out of that situation is leaders with vision, leaders with heart, with commitment, really to the people, to the masses. And what I read from Ian really inspired me and made me feel like, we might be okay if we have tech entrepreneurs who are committed to, the common man struggles, then we might just be okay. So I'm going to read a little bit from what he wrote for Nigeria's 60th independence, which was just a little bit before the End SARS movement broke out. Ian writes, "Happy 60th birthday, Nigeria. If you were a civil servant, today would be your retirement party, and shortly after, we should send you back to the village, but we are worried that you might get kidnapped. In any case, rest easy. The youth who should get your handover notes are at home, as the universities are on strike or unemployed because they don't have the skills to do meaningful work. You say they, not you, should go to the village and farm, but they'll probably be killed by a bandit who makes more, so why risk life? They are patiently waiting a never-ending turn. But perhaps if they watch enough premiership games and argue with strangers on Twitter about Big Brother, maybe trend a few dance challenges on Instagram and TikTok, somehow they'll figure out, like those Marlians did, that despite your stern exterior and bellowing voice, at 60, you are so frail, they don't need your permission to push you out of your chair and sit on it. When that day comes, I'd love to see how they rise to the challenge of rebuilding this complex nation in their own image. In the meantime, I pray that our youth learn the truth about how our nation was built by a self-perpetuating cycle of blood money and violence it must heal from, that our youth grow in love for each other because we can't afford to inherit our parents' tribal enemies, that our youth have honest conversations about who we are and who we need to be to attain these lofty heights we blame prior generations for falling off. And in the end, we make a commitment to rebuilding Nigeria as one undivided nation where peace, prosperity, and justice reigns." Not too long after this was published, the End SARS movement broke out with protests in the street, protesting literal police violence. The SARS unit can't really be called police. They're more like, a gang that terrorizes citizens. So I was super inspired by End SARS and all of that's happening in Nigeria right now. You have political movements, political organizations springing up. People are getting very organized. And so one of the things that, really excited me about the End SARS movement is how technologically savvy the organizers were, even though it was sort of a distributed model where you couldn't blame one person or point to one person who was leading the movement. You could see that those who were really driving things had a lot of technological savvy. You had people using Bitcoin to buy food and to fund activities on ground. And it just really signaled a new era for Nigeria. If you're not familiar with Iyi Aboyeji, I want to give you a little bit of background on him. Iyi Aboyeji is one of the, what I call architects of Nigeria's tech boom and tech revolution. I was in Nigeria in 2016, spent some time with the founders of Tech Cabal. And the next day, my cousin calls me and she's like, "You should have gone to Yaba today. Mark Zuckerberg is there." And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then I find out later that Mark Zuckerberg paid a visit to Andela and so many other startups and hotspots in Lagos. And when you look back on the trajectory since then, Nigeria or Africa across the continent, we've seen over $1 billion invested in startups on the continent since that time, in 2019 and 2020 consecutively. And you've seen a number of startups springing up left and right all over the continent. And I am of the opinion that Africa startups are very much leapfrogging over Silicon Valley, and we'll be able to see the tangible results of that in the really short term. So Ian co-founded Andela, Flutterwave, Future Africa. Flutterwave became one of the fastest growing payment technology businesses of all time, processing over $2 billion across 50 million transactions with annual revenues of millions of dollars a year. It also attracted significant investment from experienced players in the global payments arena, such as Combinator, who invested in Stripe, Greycroft, who invested in Braintree, and Greenvisor Capital, led by former CEO of Visa. So beyond getting Zuckerberg to invest in Andela, he's also seen partnerships with Google Ventures. I'm going to go ahead and welcome Iyinoluwa Aboyeji. Sorry that we started a bit late, but he's here with us now. I'm going to go ahead and welcome him onto the stage so that we can get to know a bit more about his story. Welcome, Ian. Can you hear me okay? And you guys have to bear with us because, you know, Nigeria's internet is often on the fritz, but these stories must be told, so we prevail. While Ian tries to connect, I'll tell you a little bit more about NOR Labs, NOR Press, and NOR Fest. NOR Labs was created to inspire and operationalize Black liberation worldwide. We do that through art, technology, and community building. Our art is distributed through NOR Fest, our traveling virtual film festival, NOR Press, our media platform, which is where you have Black Genius happening right now. And we're building Portal X, which will be a community platform, gamified goal setting, and just social interaction for Black folk across the diaspora. Ian, are you with us? If you want to learn more about NOR Labs and NOR Press, you can go to norlabs.org. I'll put the links in the comments.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Lola, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay.
Happy to have you here.
The internet today in Nigeria is a bit funny. So,
yes,
thank you.
That's
I'm
one
sure
of the
there's
things
a slight...
that we're hoping. That's one of the things we're hoping people like you will resolve in our generation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So as the video loads, I just want to kind of, you know, settle into the moment. I want to hear how things are in Nigeria right now. Clearly, a lot of things have escalated since NSARS. We can't really say the movement stopped. I think the movement kind of, you know, changed form, and now has morphed into a number of new political parties. But from the news that I've been following in Nigeria, things are pretty violent. You have the herdsmen situation, and you have the government trying to ban cryptocurrency. So I'm just curious to hear from you what's on ground and how you're feeling about what's happening in Nigeria right now. And hopefully Nigeria doesn't ban internet as Uganda did, and we'll be able to actually continue to stay connected. If you're watching, thanks for watching. Just take some deep breaths with me as we wait for the connection to reset. I'm sure he'll be back soon. Leave a question in the comments if you have questions for Ian. We want to hear from you. Welcome, Okafor. Welcome, Fashola.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I think this connection might be much better than it was before.
Okay.
Forgive the connectivity issues. No you were asking me a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, settle into what's happening in Nigeria right now. You know, give us a sense of, I know you said you're in Lagos on the mainland. And I
Yes.
wanted you to give us a sense of just what's happening and how things are feeling in Nigeria.
Yeah. I mean, what part of what's happening do you want to know about?
Everything that I get on this side is just super scary.
The what? Sorry?
I said everything I hear on this side is a bit scary.
No, it's not that scary. That I can tell you. But you know, I mean, there's what I would say is, you know, it's a growing country. I mean, many times I like to draw parallels between what Nigeria looks like today and what America looked like in the 1860s, right? You know, it's just, you know, we're in our own version of very early America, if you ask me, right? So there's work to do, and we're ready to do the work, and that's really what it is. But I think, you know, just in general, you know, in terms of what's going on the ground, lots of passionate young people building a future for themselves by leveraging the internet, which was really the dream when we moved back 10 years ago. And well, not 10 years ago yet, 7 years ago. People building amazing technology businesses, solving a range of problems. People charting their own paths by leveraging technology as a platform for serving the whole world. As usual, government being the ops that they always are and trying to stop all of that good stuff from happening. But what's an adventure without a villain? Huh?
I love your optimism. You might have to turn your volume down because I am hearing my voice really loud.
I apologize. You know, I'm trying to actually get some headphones to connect, but it's proving very difficult. I'm going to try one more time and see if it works. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
I can still hear you. Okay. You said, what is an adventure without a villain? I know that you are, you know, insanely optimistic. You seem to never be, you know, discouraged. And I remember in one of your interviews, you talked about how when nobody was expecting anything of you, it actually made things, you know, made things easier. It was less pressure. I'm curious about what you feel like, you know, your role is. We talked about futurity and, you know, the role of technology in politics. I'm curious what you see for the future of Nigeria and what you see your role as a tech entrepreneur as, what you see the role of the tech ecosystem as in building this new Nigeria over the next 5 to 10 years.
That's a great question. I mean, I think that, you know, over the long term, the conversation that, you know, brought me back and the conversation that has driven a lot of my work over the last seven years in Nigeria is really, you know, how can technology change Nigeria? And that has kind of been a recurring theme of the kind of work that we try to do. So for us, it's not just about being a tech billionaire or something, right? It's like, you know, we're trying to actually leverage these very powerful tools that technology and innovation have given us to really change our society. And I think over time, I've become more adept in understanding that what technology can do to change Nigeria is that it offers us an opportunity to turn our unique challenges into global business opportunities. And that's really the path that we've on. So, you know, as a country, we've had a chronic unemployment problem. When we came back in 2013, we helped turn that unemployment problem into one of the most resilient supply chains for global talent. And now you have three. Andela is one of the largest providers of global talent, period, right? So that's something that doesn't happen every day. So that's just an example of what's possible when you turn the challenges that you face into global business opportunities, right? So that's the work I do here. And I think for me, the end game is very simple. It's, look, if we can actually solve all our challenges, you know, turn our challenges into opportunities, we can build a prosperity and purpose within everyone's reach. And it's not that far off. You know, I was speaking to a friend yesterday and I was like, look, I think about the society that my parents grew up in, and many of our parents grew up in, and it wasn't as bad as it was now. And if we can just even go back to that, you know, my father was the son of a butcher, and my mother was, she worked for a missionary, and he was barely around. And, you know, if you if you think about what they've been able to achieve in their lives, right, and you think about what a lot of our parents have been able to achieve in their lifetimes, there's no reason why we cannot revert to that vision of Nigeria where the son of a butcher and a daughter of a missionary can go to the apex of their careers and build decent lives for themselves and their kids, and it doesn't have to go down to luck, right, or illegal activity.
Illegal activity, I presume you're trying to say. Let's send Ian some juju for his internet so that the stream reconnects. Deep breaths. I see Okafor asked how someone can join Harambeans. It's a very rigorous application process. It was almost harder than applying to Yale and Cambridge, if I could tell you the truth.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm so sorry. The internet is what it is, and here's one of the challenges that we face out here. But nonetheless, we press on.
We have to.
But as I was saying, I was just saying, I don't know where I got caught off, but I was just trying to explain that, the beauty of the work that we do in Nigeria is really our ability to turn all these challenges into global business opportunities, and that's what keeps us going.
So, would you say that talent is, I know we had a conversation about talent earlier this week, and I'm curious about what the biggest challenges are, because you've already helped to solve so many problems by laying the groundwork, laying the framework for future Andelas to be built. There's another company that I've learned about that launched recently, really picking up where Andela left off. And so over the next 10 years, what are the challenges that you're most excited about?
Well, I think for me, it's going to be, a number of very interesting things, right? Number one is, the university system essentially scored their own goal with the pandemic and the strike. And I think, for all intents and purposes, university education as we knew it in Nigeria is dead. That's a huge opportunity, right? Because now we can start thinking constructively about what do we replace university education in Nigeria with. Many parents already know that, university education in Nigeria is not something that, I want to hang my hopes on. Well, there are two approaches to how that evolution happens. On the one hand, serious faculty within the university system partner with technologists and philanthropists and corporates to build something that's befitting of the institutions. On the other hand, they ignore the gale of change that's sweeping all around us, and they get swept away by self-learning, because all the information is on the internet and the communities are being built on the internet and people are learning on their own, and people are learning really valuable skills on their own. So that's one thing that I'm super excited about. I think another thing I'm super excited about is what's changing in the landscape of financial services. Part of the reason why today was such a chaotic day was because central bank decided to ban cryptocurrencies in Nigeria. But the beautiful thing about it is there's nothing they can do about it. They're going to try as much as they can, but the problem is, the vast majority of these companies are incorporated offshore. New platforms like Circle and Stella are making it possible for their users to be able to have dollar USD stablecoin anchored bank accounts, and they're going to be able to trade regardless of whether the CBN likes it or not. And the beautiful thing about what's going on there is that if most of the people are working offshore because of the skills they've picked up, what actually starts to really change is the fact that, if they're going to be paid offshore as well into these USDC accounts, huge swaths of the economy might be dollarized before we know it, right? And that's just a revolution on another level. What are they going to do when they're earning dollars, right? What are they, how are they going to live? How are they going to construct things? These are things that questions that have to be answered. So that's number two. Number three, something I'm super excited about is infrastructure and where that needs to go. And then I admit that this is the one area where government has work to do with us. But the truth of the matter is, the way I like to look at these things, whether they like it or not, the work will get done. And that's, the challenges we've experienced with connectivity on this call kind of tell the whole story. But there's a broader challenge, which is that, when you look at subsea cable into Africa, right? We have an oversupply of capacity in Lagos. But Lagos is not Nigeria, right? So, there are new projects that are looking to bring capacity to the south, and the southeast.
Okay.
Obviously, there's no path to the north without going through, without going through the bodies of water in the south. So that might remain as they are. But, as new capacity lands in the southeast and the south, and following that capacity come hyperscaler data centers and come all sorts of other infrastructure, laptop assembly plants, phone assembly plants. The landscape is going to gradually change to become a digital forward service economy, a digitally powered service economy for real skills. Whether it's data labeling, whether it's accounting, whether it's healthcare. I mean, I was at a startup in Abuja the other day, and they have about 700 seats, and literally you have accountants and lawyers in this establishment. And what do they do? I mean, when you go to the hospital and somebody needs to summarize your hospital visit so they can bill your HMO, that work is done in Nigeria, right? When a lawyer needs, etc., when a lawyer needs a paralegal to help them file some paperwork in order to incorporate your company, that work is being done in Nigeria through this establishment. So there's a lot that's already happening when you put talent at the center and you build infrastructure around them and you leverage the data to better understand how to design the best experiences for them to be able to be productive. And then you obviously push a bit more when it comes to distribution and improving the reputation of your country and the international community. So these things.
We lost you for a couple of seconds at the end of that sentence. I just want to let you close that thought.
Okay, sorry, what did you say? I apologize.
No, we lost you for a second. You were just talking about how, these things will get done anyway, is the conclusion.
The conclusion is that these things will get done, and technology and innovation have made it such that no one can stand in the way of these things. No matter how smart or how evil or how powerful they believe they are. And, that's the beauty of the world that we now live in today.
Wow. So I just want to quickly go back to cryptocurrency, just to help people understand the history of cryptocurrency in Nigeria and why the government is seeking to ban it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm a late believer. I can't tell you I know too much about the early days, but I would say, the first time it really did come to my consciousness, I think there were two big events. Number one was, I was trying, I run an investment platform, and as you can expect, my investment diaspora, so my license and registration is in the US, and I needed to get some funds out to be able to make my commitments to my platform provider, and I couldn't, right? Because there were FX restrictions. I wasn't even trying to get it at the official rate. I was just trying to get any dollar I could, and that was the day I realized that I had to get the move on. And crypto was the only way I was able to get that payment made, and that made me a believer. And then I think my belief was further criticized by NSAS, during NSAS when the CBN started to freeze our accounts, of many people who were involved in the movement. And, it's gave us a window into how much control government had over our money. And so quite a number of people, I think, including myself, decided that we would primarily be living on dollar incomes generated outside of the country, far from the reach of the regulatory regime. So I mean, that's, and now, the track trail, quote unquote, that's now led that from there is, the government is trying to shut down the bank accounts of cryptocurrency exchanges in Nigeria, which, for all intents and purposes makes its own sense, even though in 2017 it had simply asked banks to enforce KYC on these exchanges. But now it's saying, you have to shut them down because cryptocurrencies are illegal in Nigeria. And I imagine that should happen shortly, but I don't think that it's going to have any impact on trading, because the vast majority of Bitcoin is traded offline. In fact, I know of people who literally trade it physically. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how bad it is. So
in Nigeria,
I'm telling you. So, yeah, and someone could be carrying $3 million worth of Bitcoin in a small hard drive, and you wouldn't even know it. Right in your pocket, and walk onto a plane, get into the US, and do the needful. So it's a completely different thing, when you really see how it works in the market.
Juicy. So you mentioned NSARS, and that's why crypto is so, interesting to me at this moment, because of how it was utilized during the NSARS movement. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that moment, how things sort of, erupted, and how, the climax came down to the lost lives at the Lekki toll gate. How did you sort of experience the NSARS movement?
I think my role was more muted necessarily. So a lot of my work was, helping raise funds in the background, supporting with logistics and contacts. I had members of my team work to free people from jails when they were arrested unlawfully. And so that was, and then, naturally I gave to the movement and things like that. So, I mean, my work was mostly logistical, and then at some point kind of crossed over into becoming a bridge between the NSAS protesters and reasonable voices in the government, and trying to figure out what a resolution could look like, although it wasn't really easy because, there are quite a number of unreasonable people with the government as well. And so you always have to battle, very sudden shocks and systems and messaging and so on. But, all of that, we managed to get through. But I think for me, my pride really with NSAS was a lot of people who led the movement, they were the sort of people who, a few years back weren't earning the amount of money that would have enabled them to be economically independent enough to be able to show up in somewhere like NSAS. But because of the changes in the economy, which we were lucky enough to pioneer at Andela, and because of the economic empowerment that remote work had given to a number of them, they were able to actually stand up for their rights. They could afford to stand up for their rights. And that's why the work that we do, I don't take it for granted. It's not as sexy as becoming a politician or, being a liberation fighter somewhere. I'm not in jail or anything. I play by the rules, and all of that. But I think economic empowerment is really the foundation of any generation of people who want to be able to demand democratic freedoms. And so, for me, it just doubled my hustle from the point of view of I now know what the priorities are, right? We get money into the hands of these kids and connecting them to the global economy. They're gonna do what they need to do.
What you just said reminded me of one of your quotes from our previous conversation. You said that, because then we're going to talk about, the reckoning of 2020. There was the reckoning of NSARS, but even before that, there was the reckoning in the U.S. with the George Floyd inspired movement and protest. And you said something to me. You said you're never going to see these institutions give away power, but they treat capital with respect. I want you to talk a bit about, going backwards now from NSARS to, the George Floyd protests, and even how that was experienced in Nigeria. How do you envision, I guess, intersection between movements like NSARS and movements like, the George Floyd, the reaction to George Floyd killing? How do you see gaps being bridged economically between youth on the continent and, folks agitating for liberation in the diaspora?
I mean, there are many approaches in my mind, and there are many connection points to the movement. And I think one thing I keep reminding myself is that, at the end of the day, capital is a very, very powerful tool for bending the world towards your will, right? You know what I mean? Even in democratic systems, right? You can buy political will, as we've discovered over the last couple of years, And I think what's really interesting about the approach that we've chosen as a race to advocating for our humanity is that I feel like there's a lot of demanding from people who have no incentive to respect your humanity, who've economically benefited from dehumanizing you, demanding that all of a sudden they change their mind and act in your best interest instead of theirs. And there's something about that doesn't quite make sense for me as a capitalist, right?
Okay, that was one of my questions. Capitalism or socialism, so now we know. Okay.
It's just like, I don't expect people to act against their best interests. People just don't do that. It's just something that it's just something that people don't think about or do. So I think when you think about the world from that perspective, you're a bit less shocked than most people when things turn out the way they do. So, with George Floyd, decided to go to the streets. And I think that mode of protest works. But again, we still live in a society where the vast majority of policemen walk away whole, financially and otherwise, when they do these type of things, right? In a country like Nigeria, where you would expect better, because it's not just the white people, it's a system, right? It's a system of oppression. Even Black people are participants in that system of oppression. In Nigeria, it's impossible for you to enforce a lawful judgment against a police officer who harasses you. Impossible, because it has to be by the Attorney General of the Federation, who obviously will not approve a payment claim against the Nigerian government, of which this is a part.
Well designed. Airtight.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Airtight.
Airtight.
So when you look beyond the morality and the moral heuristics and all of that, and you look at what are the mechanisms of this system and how do we dismantle them, you start to recognize how important capital becomes, right? And again, you can't give what you don't have. If the Nigerian government doesn't respect Black bodies, if it can kill people and say they didn't exist, well, that's a signal for white people, right? That's a signal for everybody else to be like, well, these people don't even value themselves, so why would we be the ones to come give them that advantage now, right? So at the end of the day, I think that these are issues we have to address from home. You know what I mean? And that's the real roots. It's like, we corralled ourselves and sold ourselves, and there's a lot of ancestral pain that we haven't fully dealt with as typical Africans. And now, we've transferred that aggression all over the world as we've spread. And there has to be like a family meeting, first of all. You know what I mean? Black people all over the world to say, okay, do we value ourselves as people? Because, if we do value ourselves as people, but there's a bunch of things that we got to, and you don't need everybody to agree. I think that's the other thing. Like everybody thinks like everybody must be in agreement. No, it just requires a very strong group of people to say, we value Black people enough to believe that Nigeria deserves a democratic government. And we will work hard with Nigerians to make that possible. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And that South Africa deserves a government that respects Black people and Black bodies, and we'll work hard with South Africans to make that possible, right? And then it becomes economic empowerment in those countries. Then empowers African Americans to then be able to then push the cause in America, because the wealth of America really comes from countries like ours, right? Even till this day, right? You know what I mean? So if you look at oil, right, we have Chevron, we have ExxonMobil, right? Why aren't there Black-owned oil companies doing that work? Do you understand what I'm saying? And I think I've dealt with Shell and Chevron many times. I've seen quite a number of Black engineers show up here to do the work, but I know there's some guy who's never or would never even consider coming to Africa that's getting all the benefits. So when we think about the diaspora as an extension of the continent, how does that change our mental models about where we can have influence and show influence and build influence and ultimately contribute to the global economy as Black people in our own unique way? So that's the conversation that needs to cap first.
The family meeting. You sound a little bit like Umar Johnson with this. Are you familiar with him?
I've seen some of his memes. I've seen some of his memes.
I'm sometimes, listen, the personality is a bit weird for me, but he says some very, very valid things. And I think one of the videos that I've shared often is the one where he talks about how if Africa gets it together, if someone is killed, if a Black person is killed in the street by police in the US and African countries raise up to do something about it, then something, ultimately will change.
But that's the problem, right? Right now, do they have the economic standing to rise up to do anything about it? They don't, right?
Yeah.
They don't have it because what are they going to say? Next year, the US is going to fund 30% of their budget.
Let's dig into that question a little bit. Because when we talk about the issues with Nigeria, we tend to focus on bad governance, bad leadership. We don't often talk about the external factors that make it so, that really cultivate an environment where these bad leaders can thrive. What are your thoughts on the structural adjustment programs, the sort of deals, the agreements to extend colonization? What are your thoughts on the agreements that countries like Nigeria have with these external partners like Chevron and ExxonMobil that creates the situation that we have in Nigeria?
I mean, I don't think it's, again, whenever I'm in a situation where I'm being taken advantage of, the first person I have a conversation with is myself. Because at the end of the day, and I don't want this to come out wrong, but oppression is a choice. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you can choose to live under oppression, or you can choose to fight for liberation. It's a choice at the end of the day, right? Not just fight, but die for liberation, right? And living under oppression is a choice. So when I look at these deals that we've done, I can understand the logic, the economic logic behind those deals, given their lack of alternatives. But then my question is, 50 years after oil was found in Oloibiri, you surely had enough time to figure this thing out. You know what I mean? And what are you doing in terms of investing in your research, investing in your institutions so that you're able to actually create more value than the people who came and raided your lands for this black gold have, right?
So it's a choice for that 1%, right? The people who get to make those deals have that choice.
Well, but also the 99% that choose to remain under their thumb, right?
Okay. I want to give you room to say more about that so that they don't drag us like Kanye. Because I know.
Yeah, but I mean, the way to think about it. No. I mean, again, a lot of people are going to drag Kanye or whatever. But I actually think he says some things not necessarily in the best possible way, but they're true. And here's my point, right? No, but this is more my point. I'm not even talking about slavery, because people who were taken away, that was not their choice. But the choice that was made was the kings that decided to sell their brothers and sisters, right? That was a choice. That was the wrong choice. Do you understand what I'm saying? And when I talk about this family meeting, those are the things that have to be on the agenda to say, when we're talking about reparations, first of all, has Africa apologized for its role in slave trade?
Only Ghana.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Then we can talk together.
I feel like Ghana is one of maybe 2 countries that has acknowledged and apologized for their role in slavery. Certainly not
exactly.
Nigeria.
And then definitely, then we can push for that agenda and say, Nigeria, well, not only should you apologize, but our African American brothers and sisters should be able to be citizens a lot easier here if they show up to get a passport, because they belong here and you sold them. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm 100% with you. Totally agree with you. So I want to come back to this economic empowerment and strategy. We had a conversation about futurism, capital, right? You've been really successful at generating capital. And I think you've talked about even how, I hope you can still hear me. We've talked about even how, in Silicon Valley,
I can hear you just fine.
They make a lot of the mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes that you've learned, you've kind of moved beyond, right? There's a statistic going around that 90% of, VCs or startups fail, even VC-backed startups fail. What is your philosophy about generating capital? What philosophy have you applied to your companies like Andela, Flutterwave, Future Africa, that makes it possible, has made it possible for you to be so successful at generating capital? Because a lot of times when we think about capital, we think about where we can get it from, who can give us money, right? Even as founders. But it seems to me that you have been able to generate capital through value creation with a model that's a bit different from what we're often taught about startups. Can you talk a bit about your philosophy on that?
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, capital derives from value that's created, right? That at the end of the day, if I meet you, you need a sweater, you need earphones. I become rich by selling you sweaters and earphones, right? There's a bunch of things that go into making sweaters and earphones, right? The wool and the cotton or whatever, the skilled tailor who's going to yarn everything together, the labels, the person who's going to sell it to you, make sure it goes in the store, all that stuff, right? There's a whole value chain that delivers the value, right, to you. And you buy it, and everybody in that value chain gets compensated. That's how value really works, right, in the world. The biggest thing, though, is it's very easy in that process to forget that this whole conversation started because you needed a sweater. And if you didn't need a sweater, the value chain would not exist. Like if you're perfectly fine walking around like our older, aunties and grandmothers and mothers did, without any clothes on, there would be no need for a sweater. And the entire value chain for sweaters would not exist. You understand what I'm trying to say? So value comes from human need, right? And human need is often seen as a bad thing, right? So we look at Africa and we say Africa is poor because it has poor kids who can't go to school because they're hungry, because they have no clean water, because they don't have this and they don't have that. They're poor. We look at all that need and call it poverty. I look at all that need and call it opportunity, right? Because it means that there is an opportunity for somebody to provide clothes for these kids. And there is an opportunity for somebody to provide food for these kids. And there's an opportunity for someone to provide a new kind of education system for these kids, right? And that's just the swap in perspective that people need to grasp about how capital really works, right? And I think until we make that mindset shift to understand that needs and challenges are really, opportunities needs to create goods and services that meet those needs, then we'll continue to bark at the wrong tree. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think that the significant paradigm shift for me has been, I look at challenges every day and I say to myself, wow, an amazing opportunity for us to build some amazing solutions, right? For the world, right? And I think that's the lens that enables anybody, including a startup or a business, generate value. So I'll bring this home to kind of the work I've done. And when I first came back to Nigeria, obviously, the high youth unemployment rate is unmistakable. It's about as pervasive as the energy.
What was the internet situation when you returned? Because I remember you said something earlier about the internet situation.
It was horrible. It was horrible. I remember then Smile just launched. Smile was like a big kind of 4G LTE provider. And, when I was trying to train the fellows, there would be whole days where I didn't get any signal. You know what I mean? Wow. I think the mobile web saved us to some extent because you could use your phone at the time, but there weren't phones that used to tether at that time. So it was, some of this stuff is new, and sometimes we can forget it. But you can forget it. But it's always important for us to always remember what it was like at that time and the kind of privilege that we have to be able to live in these times where I can talk to you over the phone. The internet, as bad as it is today, it used to be a lot worse and more expensive too, right? So times have actually changed. But back to the point I was making, I saw the youth unemployment rate. I realized the internet offered an opportunity for us to train these people to do jobs people needed done over the internet. And then we created these opportunities with Andela. One could have looked at the unemployment rate and started to berate government, which I'm not saying that they bear no responsibility for it, but I'm saying that, that there's a need and somebody has to provide that need. And whether government rises to the occasion of providing that need, if that need isn't met, right, no value will be created. It doesn't matter who governs you. You know what I mean? So these are some of the things that we just have to be more in tune with as a people, for us to be able to attract the right kind of capital.
Okay, so for founders who may be watching, you've talked about how value is created. I want to dig a bit deeper there to even look at Andela, the early days of Andela and when you knew that, it seems like Andela kind of took off because it was a very obvious, need being fulfilled. And you did have the network, right? There's definitely an element of privilege in having gone to school abroad and meeting the kind of people who could, mobilize capital. But I want to get into like the moment where you saw that this is something that's going to generate, exponential value, and the company's going to just grow on its own. Can you talk a bit about those early days?
For me, I think the first, so the first class, I put out the first class on Twitter and I said, no experience required. We'll pay you to learn how to build software. And we had 700 intakes, 700 people applied. Whittled that down to about 15 people came in for interviews. And, that was really a wake-up call for us because we then so all of a sudden realized that, wow, there's so many people who want to learn and not enough resources for them. And that was good. But I think the day I realized what we had struck on was the second class. We had 1,500 people apply. We had about 80 interviews to schedule. Now, I was in a complete state of disarray because what had happened was, we had to expand the office because we had 5 people. And we got kicked out of the boys' quarters that we originally occupied, obviously, because it was time for us to go. We didn't have the money to pay. And I had saved up all this money and gone and paid for a new office in Yaba, only for us to get there and be told that the landlady wouldn't let us in because the person we paid the money to was her delinquent tenant. So we basically got scammed, right? So I had to find an office. in Fade. I had to find a rundown old office from an old friend of the father of an old friend of a friend of mine who was also my father's friend. He gave us his old FX. He used to trade FX from that office. He gave it to us in Fade, which is not a very nice place if you think about it. And we had about 80 kids still show up for interviews through Saturday and Sunday, despite how crazy that time was. And that was when I realized, man, like we're onto something. You know, if we can do something here, it would be completely game changing. And I think what confirmed it for me was, you know, when we had our second class, and the guys at Spark Capital came down to visit. We're having interviews, you know, because they were looking to invest, and they met with the people, and they were just like completely, you know, it's very easy for you to consider it interesting when you meet, you know, smart people every day, but it was just crazy. And then, you know, another time when, you know, I realized that we had something special in our hands was, you know, I had this company, this friend who was running a company called Plum.io in Canada. And we had started to use assessments from our third class. We started to use assessments to kind of bring people in and whittle folks down. And she would tell me one day she just, like we had a lot of people apply, maybe like 4,000 people. And she calls me in the middle of the night. It's like, hey, you're melting my servers. Like, what's going on? What's, you know? And I was like, well, I just sent people to do the test we talked about. And she was like, well, first of all, you're melting my servers. I don't like that. But I think the worst part is you have some of the smartest people in the world. Like we don't get, because they compare people's like intellect across multiple different countries because they hire for everybody. And it's like, we don't get this type of results, you know. So like these are like you somehow you're finding like the top 10% of talent in the world. You know, like, and that was when I was just like, yeah, like this is definitely going to become something really, really big. So this was even.
Come on, internet. Let's give him a minute. Deep breaths. Okay, you're back.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. So I was just saying that what was I saying again?
Smartest people. You have the smartest people in the world. Thanks.
Smartest people in the world. So I mean, and that was, you know, because we could see ourselves in this light, you know, of numbers and opportunity. You know, I mean, coming from the US or Canada, really, there was this tendency for you to look at yourself in light of whatever standards were there, right? And you know, there was just a certain level of pride that I hadn't felt before working in the US, because you're not special here. Like, you're not special in the US. But to see people that look like me, like, be able to achieve that level of global recognition for how smart they were, just confirmed for me that there's so much talent in Nigeria. I mean, we're privileged people, so we have the privilege to go into Yale and Harvard and say, look, so, but I'd tell you for free, you can fill Harvard or Yale with millions of black kids. If it was fair, and if everybody could actually get a fair shot at it, and Andela confirmed that for me, and I think that was when I knew we were onto something incredible.
So I know I have to let you go soon.
No problems.
I want to talk about the futurist movement that you kind of called for. What would that look like? And what, and what kind of future, and I'm thinking 100 years. You told me the other day that you're thinking, 2233, right? Some of us are thinking about, 2050,
Yeah.
2033. You're thinking about 2233.
Yeah.
What would it look like to build the kind of movement where we can see 2233? And what does 2233 look like for you?
I mean, first of all, you really want to think about it from certain levels of first principles, right? So, because at the end of the day, the future is what you make it, right? There's no, like, it's not determinist. It's not like somebody determined it for you and you're just walking into it. You're gonna make it. And the principle for the kind of future that I imagine 2223 will be is, you live in a society where, right? So, if you're a kid, if you're smart, you take a test, or maybe you don't take a test. We just scan your brain and you're extremely talented in X, because everybody is extremely talented in something, right? You have the resources and you can make a great living just doing what you love. That's really what it means for a society to be real in the way that I'm talking about it. You know what I mean? And there are many steps there because we're so far behind, right? There are a lot of challenges to confront on the path to 2233. A big part of it is going to be leadership that refocuses talent, that puts talent at the center of everything that we do, right? Some people will call it a meritocratic society. I think everybody.
How do you do that? How do you put talent at the center? What are the tangible steps that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, from at a constitutional level, right? What are the consequences of losing a Nigerian life? If I bring it back home, like who suffers a consequence when a Nigerian loses their life? Because I think that's like the starting point. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, okay, fine, if they die of natural causes, that's fine. But like in the US, if an American loses their life, wherever they lose their life, somebody must pay. In Nigeria, there's no consequence. I can just wake up, kill you, and walk away. Now that's at the very core of it. It's an undeniable, inalienable right to life. You know what I mean? Then layered on top of that experience now has to be, okay, infrastructure and institutions that make that possible, right? From a security standpoint, from a livelihood standpoint, from a emotional security standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. Like, what are the institutions that make that real? That tell one brother, look, this guy's your brother, he's Black. You can't kill him. You know what I mean? So when those things are now in place, right? And they will only come into place if you have leadership that prioritizes life. I would say for all of President Jonathan's faults, he was somebody who did prize Nigerian life. Do you understand? And I'm not saying this to praise him. Probably one of the people voted against him, but you do need leadership that's not like shrug when they hear 10,000 people passed. You know what I mean? Like, or 5,000. So that attitude of the right kind of leadership, you know what I mean? And then cascade into a solution finding exercise that has us rebuild our institution by putting talent in the center. So it's not just about Nigeria being a country of 200 million people. It's about Nigeria being a country of Amina and Abu and
He's coming. Deep breaths. Oh, we lost him. He's going to have to come back. So we can ask our last question. Okay, you're back. All good. All good. This is what it is. You were saying a country of Amina and, Fela. I don't know what other names you said before we lost you. I'm going to read something that Ian wrote as he reconnects. And this is a really important article post that he wrote with a lot of advice for founders and leaders. And one of the things that really inspired me was this quote. He said, "I wish I knew that especially as entrepreneurs, it is so important to get involved in politics and social change causes. I give more than half of my income to political and social justice causes, and I intend to do even more. First, because whether we like it or not, politics trumps everything. Poor politics makes people poorer, and that will destroy your business. Second, we can only do business if there is a society. So if we don't push for a better society, we are like many older businessmen in this country, rent seekers. We deserve whatever the poor will eventually have coming to us. The greatest philanthropy you can give is your voice in favor of the poor and weak." If you guys have any thoughts, I'm going to read some of the comments from Okafor and Fashola. Thank you guys for keeping it lit in the comments. I appreciate you. Fashola says he's inspired despite the challenges because of leaders like us. I appreciate that. Optimism and tenacity are vital traits for an entrepreneur, indeed. Sherry is watching from Kigali. Shout out to Sherry in Kigali. Okafor says Nigeria has huge amounts of coltan. Definitely need to do a bit more to dig out some of our natural resources in Nigeria. All right, can you hear me now? Are you back?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, so
where did you lose me?
you were saying that Nigeria needs to be a country of Amina and, of individuals, not just 5,000 people who could care less about their well-being. I'm looking at your comments as E comes back. Money is power. Where we spend our money is who we empower. Thank you for that, Fashola. Economic warfare, Okafor says. Yeah, these comments, like, that's a whole it's a whole curriculum in these comments. All right, one last try. All good.
Yeah, let's give it a try. Sorry about the shaky internet.
That's all good.
Okay, so I was just saying, just to wrap up what I was saying earlier, I was just saying that, that recognition of each individual life as unique and important is the foundation of building a system that prioritizes talent. I think Nigeria still today sees people as groups, which is kind of a vestige of, I wouldn't necessarily call it colonial heritage, or I don't think it was traditional. I think people were in small enough groups that people knew who was. But I feel like as we scaled our population, there's a tendency to very easily see people as units. You know what I mean? In a much more elaborate game. And until we get back to the roots of, like, each individual is unique and has something unique to contribute to the society, and our job is to get them to be in a position where they can do so, we're going to have a very tough time building talent, as the center of, our strategy for the future. But then, in the future, when every talent is recognized for who they are and what they bring to the table, the global table, really. And we recognize each other, we see each other. What will then happen is, we start to answer the question, what can Africa do for the world, right? We're more than the sum total of our governments. We're more than, we become contributors. So, and that's where we
Deep breaths. Fashola, I dropped the link to the article. Really, really valuable article. So you can check it out there. It's on opentraction.com. Okafor says African Americans are a $2 trillion people. That's big facts. The Saudis and the Emirates educated their youths to learn how to leverage oil to benefit themselves. And that's exactly what we need in Nigeria and every African country. Okay, we'll give him a couple more minutes because we still got to get our last two questions answered. We want to know how 2020 changed E and what his thoughts are on Black history. And then we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for hanging tough with us. Appreciate you guys. Hi. Two questions, just two questions that I have left for you. I know it's well over. How did 2020 change you?
Man, that's a great question. 2020. 2020 changed a lot of my approach to thinking about Nigeria and its challenges. So my previous thought process when I faced challenges in Nigeria was to whine about it. But increasingly, I think in 2020, I started to learn how to accept that the obstacle is the way. So all the challenges that we face here, beyond the fact that we're meant to face them, that's part of the plan. There are basically stress tests for a much larger task that's in front of us, which is rebuilding society. And so unless we participate in this process of breaking things down, and also unless we participate in this process of fighting for the society that we want, we don't deserve an opportunity to lead whatever new society emerges out of this. So I'm more at peace with Nigeria. I have no desire where this is the longest I've been in Nigeria in the last 7 years since I got here. Yeah, this is the longest I've ever been. So,
So my last question, this is Black History Month, right? And so we're doing this, this series to really get Africans to pay attention to Black History Month, to create dialogue between the continent and the diaspora about Black History Month. I want to hear your thoughts on Black history, and as a message to, everybody who's watching, why Nigerians should be interested in Black history, why Black people, what is the importance of Black history, and how do we kind of, benefit from it as we build the future?
Look, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know enough about is how much of our journey, our independence journey, was inspired by Black people in America. Like in many ways, the story we tell about the diaspora saving Africa is something that has happened before. An example of something that a lot of people, you think about people like Marcus Garvey, you think about people like Malcolm X, think about people like Martin Luther King. These people inspired our independence movement. You understand what I'm trying to say? There are other people as well who, was reading an article the other day about a family who returned to Africa and Nigeria specifically, and they invented what we call agege bread, right?
They invented what? Agege bread.
Shackleton, I think was his name, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was Shackleton or Shackleford. I don't remember. Amos Shackleford or Amos Shackleton. But I mean, like, this guy was a quote unquote slave returnee. You understand what I'm saying? Who became kind of the bread king, right? And he basically built out like our bread industry. You know what I mean? But apart from building out our bread industry, he was the person who actually started to organize Nigerians. You know what I mean? To be able to demand their independence from British. So I say this to say that the connections between Africa, because I see a lot of harmful narratives that try to drive division between Africans and African descendants of slavery, and I find it very it's very clever by whoever is pushing those narratives and extremely disingenuous. But you know, like when you hear the stories of people like Amos Shackleford, and you hear the stories of West Indians and Americans in Lagos that helped build our society as we know it, and set up the Lagos branch of the United Negro Improvement Association, and set up the NNDP, which was kind of the first proper political party. You know, you start to realize that we're more alike than we think, right? And we were just successfully divided by the British and the colonialists. So, I mean, that's just my own random thought.
Random thoughts, some radical Black history here.
You know, very fun. Yeah, you know, one really funny thing. So, you know, I don't know if you've ever been in Wheatbaker, right?
Where?
But Wheatbaker Hotel in Lagos. So Wheatbaker Hotel in Lagos, the reason why it's called the Wheatbaker is because Wheatbaker is also one of Lagos's top hotels. Lagos's Wheatbaker in Lagos used to be Amos Shackleford's home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
see, Black history, and Fashola's noting how Nnamdi Azikiwe and Kwame Nkrumah went to HBCUs. I also read, you know, stories of Africans going to the U.S. in the early 1900s and inspiring folks there. So we've always collaborated and worked together across the board. W.E.B. Du Bois and in London, meeting with Caribbean leaders and African leaders. So I appreciate that you know that history. We're going to wrap up and let E go. We've managed to pull through with all of the internet challenges and gotten so much wisdom from you today. We really appreciate it. For those of you who stuck with us throughout the episode, we appreciate you. Shout out to Fashola and Dozier. If you're watching this on YouTube, wherever you're watching this on Facebook, please, you know, share it with a friend. We'll be releasing the podcast, the edited podcast, by next week. So you can look out for that. Subscribe to Black Genius on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Join our mailing list. I'm dropping the link to join our mailing list in the chat. We have some beautifully crafted newsletters and love letters that go out to our community. You definitely want to be a part of this radical, visionary Black community that is crafting a liberated Black future. We love you. We appreciate all of your support. And check us out next week. Next week, we'll have another Harambean, a second in our 10 by 10 series, Seni Suleiman, who was also part of Andela in the early days and who is extremely talented at cultivating high-performing teams. So look out for more information about him, about that episode, and how you can watch Black Genius next week. We love y'all. Take care. Eat your greens, take your vitamin C, your vitamin D, and stay up. Till next week.